Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The moment it happened, it felt almost accidental, just a flicker of eye contact that lingered longer than it should have. I had been standing in front of the mirror, towel slipping from my shoulders, wet hair clinging to my neck as I combed my fingers through it. The room was warm from the shower, soft steam drifting across the glass, blurring my reflection into something gentler, something dreamlike. I wasn't thinking of anyone. I wasn't trying to be seen. I was simply breathing, unwinding, letting the quiet settle around me. But then the door clicked, just barely, and when I turned, he was there. His eyes met mine, steady, unguarded, and something subtle but unmistakable shifted in the air. Not a word, not a move, just a sudden closeness that made my pulse rise in my throat. His presence filled the doorway, hesitant yet drawn in as if he couldn't help it. And for a heartbeat, neither of us looked away. It shouldn't have felt different. Yet it did. His smile, soft, unsure, held a warmth I wasn't prepared for. A quiet warmth that curled into me before I could stop it. I felt my breath catch, not in fear or confusion, but in that startled awareness that something had changed without warning. I straightened slightly, fingers still tangled in my damp hair, trying to ground myself. The room felt smaller, the silence thicker, like the air itself was paying attention. I could sense him noticing the little things, my breathing, the way I leaned toward the mirror, the shimmer of water still clinging to my skin. Not in a way that crossed a line, but in a way that said he felt the shift too. And then he whispered my name. Soft, careful, almost reverent. The sound traveled across the few feet between us, landing deep in my chest. A warmth unfurled there, slow and unsettling, leaving a shiver that ran down my spine before I could steady myself. I knew, even in that moment, that I should have told him to step out, to give me space, to pretend none of this meant anything. But the truth is, I didn't. I couldn't. Not when the air was humming with something unspoken. Not when his gaze held mine as if waiting for a sign. Not when I could feel the beginning of a tension neither of us fully understood yet. And as he stepped just slightly closer, the boundary between what was normal and what was becoming something else trembled, thin, fragile, and impossible to ignore. The moment stretched long enough for me to gather my towel a little tighter around my shoulders. He stepped inside the room as if drawn by something he couldn't name. I didn't speak at first. I was still trying to steady the warmth rolling through my chest. He cleared his throat softly, a small, nervous sound that somehow made everything more intimate instead of less. I didn't mean to interrupt, he said gently. You didn't, I replied, though we both knew he had, and also that I didn't mind. His gaze dipped quickly to the strands of wet hair clinging to my collarbone, then lifted back to my eyes. That tiny flicker felt like lightning, quick, forbidden, but impossible to ignore. He moved closer, stopping just a step behind me, and for a moment it felt like the whole room held its breath. I heard the water running, he added. Just wanted to check if you needed anything. There it was, normal, harmless words, but spoken with that softness that made my heartbeat stumble. I turned back toward the mirror, pretending to adjust my towel, pretending not to notice how near he was. In the reflection, I caught him watching me, not in a way that crossed lines, but in a way that held honesty, curiosity, something he didn't know how to hide. You're staring, I murmured. His lips curved slightly, not denying it. You just looked lost in thought. Lost. Yes, that was one word for it. I reached for my hairbrush on the counter, but as I did, his hand brushed mine lightly, barely a touch, just skin meeting skin by accident or fate. The contact was feather-soft, but it sent a quiet spark through my arm. We both froze at the same time, our fingers pausing together on the cool handle of the brush. Sorry, he whispered. It's okay, I whispered back. But neither of us moved for a moment. The brush became an anchor neither of us seemed ready to release. Slowly, our hands separated, but the warmth stayed. I stepped sideways, intending to give myself space, but he instinctively stepped in the same direction, close enough that I could feel the heat of him without touching. We both laughed softly, a little awkward, a little aware. "This is strange," I admitted. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But not in a bad way." There was a pause, small, fragile, dangerous. Then he reached out, lifting a single strand of my damp hair that had slipped across my cheek. He brushed it back gently, his fingertips barely grazing my skin. The touch was so soft it felt like breath. I didn't pull away. He didn't either. And in that quiet second, something unspoken settled between us, warm, undeniable, and impossible to forget. The moment he brushed that single wet strand from my cheek, everything inside me tightened, my breath, my heartbeat, my certainty about where the line even was. I felt his fingers tremble just enough to tell me he felt it too. He dropped his hand quickly, stepping back half an inch, as if that tiny retreat could undo what had already passed between us. I turned toward him slowly, towel secured tight, still damp from the shower, but suddenly warmer for an entirely different reason. "This can't," I began, though the rest of the sentence refused to form. "I know," he answered before I finished, his voice low, steady, too honest. "I've been telling myself the same thing." His eyes lifted to mine, cautious, conflicted, wanting. That look alone stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't bold. It wasn't reckless. It was simply real. And real was far more dangerous. I stepped aside, intending to put a little distance between us, but he moved too, close enough that his shoulder nearly brushed mine. It didn't feel accidental. Not anymore. "You should go," I whispered. He swallowed. "Do you want me to?" That question. That tone. Soft, but carrying all the tension neither of us said aloud. My throat tightened. "I should say yes. But you didn't," he replied gently. I looked away, toward the fogged mirror. My reflection looked conflicted, drawn in, lit by a feeling I had no right to entertain. I tried to remind myself of loyalty, boundaries, the role I was supposed to play. But desire had a way of slipping through the smallest cracks, quiet but persistent, like warmth spreading through cold. He stepped closer, slowly, giving me time to turn him away if I wanted to. I didn't. His presence brushed against me like a quiet confession. I could hear his breathing now, steady but deeper than before. "Tell me to stop," he said. But the words that rose in my chest weren't the ones I was supposed to say. Instead, I looked up at him fully, letting him see everything I was trying to hide. His eyes locked onto mine longer than they should, softer than they should, full of a pull neither of us were ready for. His hand lifted slightly, hesitating in the space between us, as if fighting himself. My heart pounded, not in fear, but in the unbearable nearness of something we were both trying so hard not to acknowledge. "Don't," I whispered, not telling him to stop, not telling him to continue, just caught. He took one more step. I felt the warmth of him, the closeness, the breath that almost touched my skin, and then, just before anything happened, a sound echoed from down the hallway. We froze. Everything shattered into silence. The line we were about to cross hovered there, thin, trembling, waiting to decide our next move. The sound from the hallway faded almost as quickly as it came, but the moment had already cracked. We both stood perfectly still, like two people holding a breath they couldn't release. I tightened the towel around me again, feeling my pulse racing in places I didn't want him to notice. He stepped back only a little, enough to show caution, but not enough to truly create distance. When the house settled into silence again, he looked toward the door, then back at me. "We're alone," he said quietly. It shouldn't have made my heart jump the way it did. But it did. I swallowed. "You should probably go check." He didn't move. His gaze stayed on mine, steady, searching, a little shaken, but drawn in all over again. That alone almost pulled me toward him. "Nobody's there," he murmured. "It was just the house." He took one slow step toward me. This time, I didn't step away. The steam had almost disappeared from the mirror now, leaving our reflections clearer, too clear. I saw the rise and fall of my breathing. I saw how close he was. I saw how his hand twitched as if he wanted to touch me and didn't know how to ask. "We shouldn't be like this," I whispered. "I know," he said, voice low, almost trembling, "but it feels like we're trying to stop something that already started." His honesty was disarming. Dangerous. True. A quiet, nervous laugh escaped me, soft, fragile, betraying how undone I felt. He laughed too, quietly, but his eyes didn't lose that heat. It only grew, warm and hesitant, like a flame trying not to catch fire. I brushed a damp strand of hair behind my ear, and his eyes followed the motion. My skin prickled in places untouched. He stepped closer until I could feel the warmth radiating off him, breath mixing with breath, heartbeat near enough that my body recognized it before my mind did. "Look at me," he said softly. I did. And the air tightened. We stood a breath apart. A fraction. A heartbeat. The tiniest shift, and we would cross a line neither of us could pretend away. His hand lifted slowly, so slowly that the anticipation itself felt like touch. He reached toward my cheek, then hesitated, fingers hovering just above my skin as if the smallest movement would unleash everything we were trying to hold back. I leaned in without meaning to. He noticed. His breath caught. Mine did too. Everything, silence, longing, fear, desire, fused into one unbearable second. His fingertips brushed my jawline barely, softly, enough to send a tremor through me. And then footsteps again. Closer this time. We both froze, breath suspended, hearts thundering. The moment shattered at the very edge of becoming something neither of us could take back. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped. We stood frozen, breath tight, hearts pounding like two people caught doing something they hadn't actually done yet. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the heat between us. Then a soft knock rattled the doorframe. "Are you in there?" His voice. His father's. My entire body stiffened. The young man in front of me instantly stepped back, running a shaky hand through his hair, trying to erase the tension etched across his face. I clutched my towel tighter, forcing myself to breathe as the door opened a crack. His father peered in, confused, eyebrows tight. "Everything okay?" I thought I heard something. I nodded quickly. "Just dropped the brush," I lied. My voice was too soft, too uneven. He looked between us. Once. Twice. And I saw something shift behind his eyes, suspicion, brief but undeniable. It was a warning. A reminder of the lines drawn long before any longing ever existed. He lingered for a moment too long, then finally said, "All right, just checking," and walked away. The door clicked shut. Silence returned, but now it was heavier, sharper, edged with fear and something even more dangerous, the realization that someone else had felt the tension we had tried so hard to hide. The young man exhaled shakily. "He knows," he whispered. "No," I said, though the tremble in my voice betrayed me. "He just noticed we were standing too close." "We are standing too close." He wasn't accusing. He wasn't retreating. He was confessing. I turned away, trying to steady myself. "This can't happen," I murmured, softer than I intended. "Your father, this house, everything I know," he cut in, voice low but burning. "But that doesn't stop how I feel. It doesn't stop this." He took a step closer. I felt it. That magnetic pull that had been growing for weeks, maybe months, now stronger because of the danger, because we had almost been caught, because pretending was no longer possible. "What do you mean, this?" My voice was barely breath. He hesitated. Then he spoke with a raw honesty that made my chest ache. "The way I look at you, the way it scares me how much I think about you, the way being near you feels like the only thing that makes sense, even when it shouldn't." His words hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. I turned toward him, and the moment I did, the air cracked open again, charged, hungry, trembling with everything we were trying to deny. His eyes traveled to my face, then to the towel wrapped around me, then back to my eyes, and the longing there made my heartbeat stutter. I took one step back. He followed with one step forward. Not touching. Not crossing. Just drawn. "Tell me you don't feel it," he whispered. I opened my mouth to lie, maybe, or to run, or to stop this before it spun out of control. But what came out wasn't denial. I feel it, I breathed. His hand lifted slowly, trembling, reaching for my face again, closer than ever before. My breath caught, my resolve thinned, and the room shrank around us until there was only his warmth, his eyes, his unspoken confession. We were one breath away from crossing everything we shouldn't. He leaned in, I leaned in, and just as our lips were about to touch, the world seemed to hold its breath with us. For a breathless heartbeat, the world stood still around us. His face hovered inches from mine, eyes burning with every unspoken feeling we had been trying to outrun. I could feel the warmth of him, the nearness, the trembling questions suspended between us. After everything, the hesitations, the risks, the moments we almost stepped back, we were finally here, on the edge of something that felt bigger than either of us understood. His hand cupped the air beside my jaw, not quite touching, but close enough that the heat made my skin tighten. "I can't keep pretending this isn't real," he whispered, voice shaking with honesty. I tried. I swear I tried. My breath faltered. So did I. The confession slipped out before I could stop it. The truth was its own release, raw, heavy, terrifying, and somehow freeing. He leaned closer, eyes dropping briefly to my lips, but not touching. The tension was electric, alive, something that had been building for far too long. Instead of crossing the line, he pressed his forehead gently against mine, a gesture so intimate it sent a rush through me brighter than anything forbidden. That alone felt like a spark finally igniting. I exhaled shakily, my towel still tight against me, clinging to the last bit of reason. "If we do anything, everything changes." "Maybe it already has," he murmured. His thumb brushed the air beside my cheek again, so softly it felt like a ghost of a touch. My heart raced, not from fear, but from the overwhelming tenderness in his face. Tenderness I hadn't expected from someone trying so hard to be grown, but suddenly looking vulnerable, almost broken. "Tell me something," he whispered. "If I walk away now, will it hurt you?" I closed my eyes, chest tightening. More than it should. A quiet shudder escaped him, part relief, part torment. The emotion between us thickened, deepened, shifted into something that felt far more dangerous than desire. Because desire fades. But this felt like the beginning of love. That realization hit me like a wave, leaving me breathless. He opened his eyes, staring at me with a seriousness I'd never seen before. "Then I need to know if you choose this, or if I should leave before either of us do something we can't take back." There it was, the twist I wasn't ready for. A choice. A real one. Our faces still inches apart, breath mixing, the air charged and trembling. I felt the weight of everything pressing in, loyalty, danger, longing, the quiet truth pulsing between us. I parted my lips to answer, and suddenly, the doorknob turned. We jerked apart, hearts slamming in our chests. The door creaked open, leaving us suspended mid-climax, on the edge of a decision that could break everything, or change it forever. When the door opened, everything inside us snapped back into stillness. His father blinked, confused, noticing only that we stood awkwardly apart, the tension masked, but still humming beneath the surface. He asked a simple question, something ordinary, harmless, and then he left again, unaware of how close he'd come to catching a moment that could have changed everything. When the door clicked shut once more, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't dangerous anymore. It wasn't charged with fear. Instead, it was heavy with the consequences of everything we had finally admitted, everything we had finally allowed ourselves to feel. He exhaled shakily and ran a hand through his hair. "That was close." "Too close," I whispered, adjusting my towel, though my hands trembled for reasons that had nothing to do with modesty. He leaned against the wall, head lowered for a moment, gathering himself. Then he looked up at me, really looked, and the softness there made my chest ache. "About what I said." "I meant it," he murmured. "Every word. I didn't say it because of the moment. I said it because it's been true for a long time. Those words settled into me like warmth after a storm. I stepped toward him slowly, letting each movement speak what my voice couldn't. There was no line crossing, no reckless impulse, just two people finally speaking with their hearts instead of their fear. I felt it too, I said softly. Before today. Before any of this. I just didn't know how to let myself admit it. He straightened, eyes widening slightly. The space between us closed gently, naturally. Not rushed. Not forbidden. Just right. His hand hovered near mine, waiting. I didn't pull away. I let my fingers graze his instead, a touch so small yet so powerful it felt like the beginning of something real. The warmth of his skin, the trembling hope in his breath, the way he leaned in as if afraid I'd disappear, it all filled the room with a quiet, undeniable intimacy. He wasn't asking for anything he shouldn't. He wasn't taking anything. He was simply waiting for me to choose. I stepped closer, and his forehead brushed mine softly, a touch more intimate than any kiss could have been in that moment. Our breaths mingled, warm and slow, the air thick with every feeling we'd kept hidden for far too long. No lines crossed. No rules broken. Just a closeness that felt like truth. "We'll figure it out," I whispered. He nodded, eyes closing with relief, with something deeper, something lasting. And as we stood there, forehead to forehead, hearts steadying in rhythm, I realized this wasn't the end of something dangerous. It was the beginning of something unforgettable.